come up with the schedule for all of your content on all social media platforms you are on. And with all other platforms as well, but since social media is basically just connecting people over the internet, you could also say that something like Netflix is eventually social media. I mean, we cannot really comment on Netflix right now, but well, of course YouTube is social media, of course Facebook is social media, of course Tumblr is social media, of course Pinterest is social media, of course TikTok is social media, because it just connects people. It's a medium that's social. So now, over the years, I had many different attempts at trying to come up with the schedule. And here is what I came up with. You just use the heuristics people already use all around the world. Basically, we divide time, as time is kind of also a frequency. I mean, if you take time and divide it by time, it's a frequency, I guess. If you take a number and divide it by time. So now, what do we have? You could publish every single second, every single minute, every single hour, every single day, every single week, every single month, every single year, every single decade, every single millennium. So what of these do we choose? Of course, we can choose the day, we could choose the week, we can choose the month, and maybe the year, but you could do like a movie every year, or every decade, I guess. So it would be, or a book. So therefore you have these bigger releases also. Why does it make so much sense? Because we have words for it. We have words like in a second. It's not really a word, but we have words like weekly, monthly, daily. Why? Because these are just frames we already use. And if you now use all of these frames, you get the advantages of all these frames. For example, daily. Daily is the rhythm of every single person on this earth. So if you now publish something daily, you can make the watching of your content or the looking at your content a habit, a daily habit. If you now publish the same time every single day, these persons eventually who follow you will get attached to you, because they are like every single day, they are like, oh yeah, has he already posted? And it becomes a part of the day, it becomes a part of the rituals. Because let's face it, almost every day is kind of, not the whole day of course, but we have all these rituals, and the more rituals we have, the more secure we feel as humans. So now, here's my story of trying to come up with different posting schedules. I wanted to do, it's not really that I tried, I came up with concepts, and I didn't really get into it. I wanted to do Instagram for a very long time, and I created all of these pictures, and I was like, yeah, but I have to do all these filters, and then all the pages have to look exactly the same. Not exactly the same, but they had to have a certain look, and if someone scrolled down my feed, they should be, wow, this dude is so cool. But then, when do you post these pictures? The main problem is that most of these platforms, YouTube, Facebook is an exception, because you can actually post in the past, but the main problem is, what if you do something wrong, and then you posted a picture like 3 months ago, and then it doesn't fit into your feed anymore because you now changed strategy. Therefore, from day one, you actually have to have the whole concept in front of you. You actually have to have all the pictures in front of you. Like, here are the pictures for the next 3 years. Because this is the only way you could make sure you would actually create this thing. Because otherwise, something else could happen, and you are like, yeah, this is not worth it anymore. I just don't invest the time anymore. So the only way I thought it could work, it was to just have this concept, this plan all along. And this is also how all professionals do it, kind of. But also kind of not. And here is the other reason, or here's the other way. So this is not really the other way, but I'm trying to make a bridge in between those two. In between coming up with the perfect posting schedule and trying to come up with the perfect image. And the other side, of course, is just posting random stuff completely randomly. The thing about posting random stuff completely randomly, which is the other opposite, the extreme, is that if you just randomly post things on Facebook, like your meal, for example, or this is something I learned from life, then the people who already follow you, most of them probably just your friends, they will be like, what? Huh? And even if somebody followed you, if you posted like something about a movie the one day, and then about, oh, I bought this new bottle the other day, then the thing is, it's just very unlikely that someone who follows you for the movies will also be into the bottle purchase. I mean, it could be, but if you think about all the people, they're all in different circles, kind of. And sometimes these circles overlap. And if all of these circles overlap, it's kind of you. But most of people aren't you, and therefore most of the people just don't have all of your interests, but only parts of them, or only one interest of them. Therefore, it kind of makes sense to channel all of your things into different channels. That's what they call channels. Now, trying to create the perfect thing is something that is not really possible, because perfect is an ideal. Therefore, eventually, if you think about all of this stuff, you have to be real. You have to be, okay, but I don't spend more time on this anymore because I just want to have it done. But the problem is, if you now want to have this perfect schedule, from day one, the people who already follow you will already have seen the picture you posted and then delete it again. Therefore, I think what you have to do, and this is what kind of not really solved it for me, but made it easier, is kind of this. I created the perfect media type. The perfect media type looks like this. It's something you can publish on every single platform, whether it be video, audio, so podcast, whether it be short form, long form. You could also post stories about it, and basically upload it to every single platform. And then also have the engagement, also the views of every single platform. And you only would do it basically in the same time, so therefore you would post it, maybe upload it to one distributing service, and then it would just get all of these views, all of the following, with just one post. But instead, social media is much more like, yeah, I post something on Facebook, and there. So therefore, of course, you could be like, oh, I posted this on Facebook, and then I post this 2 weeks later on Instagram or on my blog. But eventually you will run into the bottleneck of managing all these things. What if you had posted 100 things on Facebook, and you now were like, oh, this could actually blog posts, therefore I transfer them to my blogs. Then, yeah, oh, I missed this one, and oh no, where is this? And then you search for it. These are things that take an immense amount of time. If you don't do these things right from the beginning, you will kind of waste time by not being efficient, by searching for things, by searching for single files. But if you don't have a backup of all the videos you created, then when your hard drives fail, you start from day one again. So having a system, it's not about having a system versus just doing everything completely randomly. The thing is, social media, the more advanced social media gets, the more it understands people, and the more it understands that most people, if they have to come up with a system like this, will eventually not do anything at all, because it's just too complicated, because it's just an optimization process that is just too long. It just takes too long, too much energy, and therefore they just don't do it. So what social media makes kind of so easy is, for one, it's on our phones, and whether it's the same thing on our phones or on our notebooks, if we have a computer in front of us and we actually type things like our name into it, we are like, oh no, I don't want to type my name into it. But if we are on an app and it's like my name and my email, yeah, just go for it, and after a few seconds it's done. Now, this is also why Instagram just may be so popular, because for the longest time you could only post on mobile, and this makes it easier. This also makes it something that's with you all the time, because it's part of you. It's in your pocket, it's in your phone, and you pull it out, and it's this nice little thing. It's these nice little images you just take with your phone. Basically, that's already kind of part of you. So I tried to create the perfect media type, and it looked like this. Essentially, I wanted to do YouTube, but also Instagram, but also maybe Tumblr, but also maybe TikTok. But TikTok didn't really exist back then. And also maybe a blog. So what I try to do is, how about I write something that's worth reading? How about I then take this and read it to you, whether this is just reading it to you like this, maybe having my phone and reading it to you, or actually reading it to you while I'm screen recording something. Then I would have a a video already, and then I could just take the video that I have already and the audio that I now have already, and since I also can speak in a speaker voice and not so in this very essay voice I have been speaking before. I mean, I'm not overdoing it right now, but the thing is, then I would have basically a high quality audio file, and if I eventually in 10 years would be like, oh, let's try to do like these very nice animation videos, these very informational videos, then I could also do this, and I would already have the script, the audio, and all I would have to do is just add the images basically and export the video. Then I could also take snippets out of these videos and make short videos short videos didn't really exist back then, but on Instagram, on Facebook Reels, on Instagram Reels, and on TikTok, you just take snippets out of this big video, which you store once, and then you take the snippets out of this, and you can either store all the snippets, because, for example, TikTok just downloads all the snippets, and then you could just take all of these phrases out. Like if you had a video about the dark web, then you could take out a phrase where it's like, the dark web is essentially something whiteheads came up with, something people with black caps and white shirts. Of course, this is complete nonsense, but it is a sentence that in itself kind of makes sense. And therefore, you would basically could create not only, you could also do this with visual stuff alone. Like, you could take a blog post and then take quotes out of this blog post. That's the same thing. It's like you take a blog post, and then often blog posts have images like, okay, I traveled to the city, and that's what's so nice about the city. And then you take one picture and post it on Instagram, and take like the text that's about the picture from the blog post. Therefore, you would have this one content. So I traveled to this random city in Europe, so I traveled to Paris, and Paris was nice. Then you could actually make a video about it. You already would have a video if you wouldn't do anything else, just by recording the stuff you already did. And also by recording the stuff, you would also proofread the stuff, and therefore you would read it once more, but the once more would not really be proofreading, because you already are producing something again. Therefore, it's not like you're wasting your time with just doing the same thing again and again. So I came up with this, and this is also how I kind of managed all of these things. I already wrote some blog posts, but essentially I was like, yeah, I wanna post something from this blog post onto all of these platforms, and now I can, because I have this thing, and this is the thing that kind of was the thing. This is my backup basically, and because writing a blog post at least takes 1 or 2 hours, so for me, if I keep everything up, and it's like 1,000 words basically, maybe, and I write very fast and I try to do everything in 1 hour, it sometimes works that I can do it in 1 hour with the posting and with the scheduling and with inserting the images and with downloading the images and stuff like this. Finishing it in 1 hour is very nice, and then I of course have to record it again and stuff like this. But yeah, so what I wanted to say is this: since I spent so much time writing these, I just didn't want to waste them, and I also just didn't want to be in a position, because I was in this position like many times before, where I had published a few things like on my blog, and I had a few views, and then I just didn't have anything, because I just didn't have time for a few days, because I had to do something else. Of course, maybe I wanted to do something else, but the thing is, you should always have a backup plan for when, it just will happen that you will not be able to publish and write something every single day. It's just a matter of time until you run out of things to post, if you post them in a very low frequency. So therefore, seconds don't really make sense. Minutes also don't really make sense. Hours could make sense when it comes to TikTok, and you are able to produce like 10 TikToks a day or 100 TikToks a day, which is something that probably would be possible, but then you would only be producing TikToks all day long, maybe for the rest of your life. The thing is, it also always should be a long-term strategy. What if you posted 100 TikToks and then you had a certain amount of followers, and then you actually did something else, but there's nothing happening? Therefore, it always has to be long-term. It always has to be a long-term strategy. So what I did is I wrote blog posts, and I recorded them, and I try to come up with the scheduling plan. And here is how coming up with the scheduling plan with long term in mind now works. First, you take the time you actually want to be covered by all the posts you already have. It's not that you can write 100 blog posts a day. Nobody can do this. Maybe 10 a day if you are really, really good, and if the blog posts are not really, if they are really short, maybe. But the thing is, it's actually very easy. You just take the time you want to be covered by the blog posts. For example, I want to be sure for the next 5 years, or for the next 2 years, or for the next year, that if something happens in case I cannot write anymore, you could break your hand and then be not able to write for 2 weeks. You could also lose your hand and then not be able to write at all until technology arrives that makes it possible to write really well without your hands. But currently, this is not really the case. Therefore, of course, you could then stop your blog, but what if you had a backup plan? What if you always had something that is independent from you, that would just post it for you? And what if the only role you had to do is to fill up the stack in the backend? The only thing you do is not, okay, I wrote this and now I post it. Because then also you have a very high dependency on how well this content does. But for example, if I recorded something like 3 months ago and I post it today and it doesn't do well, then I'm like, yeah, I already got some new stuff and that just might do better. But if you post the new stuff and it doesn't do well, then you don't have anything. You don't have anything in the backend, and then you are completely dependent on how well something does because you don't have anything in the backend. So now, ideally, this is what I did. I was like, I want to take a heuristic. A heuristic is something that makes it easier. So, makes thinking easier by just using random things we think that are nice. For example, you could use 1 year. You could also use 2 years. The heuristic of even numbers. You could also use the 5-year heuristic, or not really 5-year heuristic, but you take multiples of 5, so therefore the first is 5 years, the next would be 10 years, 15 years, 20 years. What if you, for example, instead of trying to create some music and then post it for the next week, all of it, or the next 2 weeks, what if you were able to create something that, independent of you, just post it for the rest of your life? What if for the next 100 years, if you lived for 100 years, and even if you don't live anymore, imagine Johann Sebastian Bach would have set something up. Of course, due to technology constraints, this wasn't really possible. But what if he had set something up that would still be posting today, would still be releasing music to Spotify? That would be insane, I guess. Instead of, yeah, I wrote this and now I post it over the next 2 months and then it's gone forever and nothing else to come. Now, you take the time you want to be covered, like 10 years. So, when it comes to my first blogs, I had like 10 articles, and there was like, of course you also want to be, it doesn't really make sense if you only have 2 blog articles and now they have to cover 10 years. But at the same time it does. Because, you can also post these 2 and then get no views, because this is what will be happening. And then it's gone forever, unless you unpublish it and then try to publish it again. So therefore, the only approach that really makes sense is to take the time you want to be covered by these things, by these planned things, and then just divide it by the content you already made. And then, here is what makes it very nice, and also what makes it basically a motivation. So with every count you go up, you actually receive something in return, because everybody wants to post something they already have made, because everybody is seeking the confirmation. Of course, some people are better at not seeking the confirmation, but if you put something out there, it's something you thought, it's something you wrote, and the more people like it, the better you feel. It's pretty obvious. Now, the thing is, it's of course delaying the gratification, therefore it's also difficult. Therefore, some people just randomly post every single day and then they feel good about it. Sometimes whenever somebody's down, they just post something and then you feel a little bit better. It's like, yeah, it's basically self-gratification, but be brought into the moment. So now, what it looked like for me in the beginning, I had like a few posts, so I had like 10. And I was like, what is the optimal strategy? Because, I will probably be able to write some more. And, yeah, in the beginning I was like, just post it. and then I run out. So this was not a strategy that really worked, because then I just felt really bad, because it's just this fear. It's like, if I don't write today, then it will all be gone, and it will all be gone for nothing. And it's true, because if you post something and then you post nothing for the next 2 years, then it will be gone, because nobody will care about it anymore. But if instead you had still one of these 2 blog posts left, then at least you wouldn't have to fear this thing. Because what happens if you do something and then you post something, and then this fear comes, this fear that once you do it, you won't be as good anymore. This fear that once you do it, you won't satisfy the people anymore, because they expected a higher quality. What happens if you just have a huge stack? I mean, you know what the quality will look like, therefore you just know, and therefore it's just much easier to get just another thing, because it's something people will not be able to see for a month, for 3 months, for half a year. So I had a few blog posts, and then I was like, okay, how about I just release it for the next 5 years, or for the next 2 years. Essentially, first of all, I was like 1 year, so I extended it to 1 year. So then I had like 6 blog posts, which I thought were kind of nice. And it was like, okay, 1 year, I could make 2 months. Then I wrote a little bit more, and I was like, how about 2 years? And how about I actually let it start at a decade, because that would be much nicer. Eventually, I landed on, so currently I have like overall written, not into the dozens, but already I'm over 100 blog posts, which is not really much if you consider it, but if you also consider the time, I mean, it's 1 to 2 hours, and in the beginning I didn't take 1 to 2 hours, but sometimes it took a day. For example, I wrote something about a movie, and it just took me a day, because it was so complicated, the movie already, and then the writing, and I also didn't want it to be wrong, but it's of course only short-term thinking, but it's like, yeah, but I want to explain this as good as possible. But if it takes 2 days, then the next time you will be, oh yeah, it takes 2 days, so better I do something else with my life. What if instead you just shortened it down? What if instead you just accepted lower quality? I mean, this is just another thread entirely, because this is about the posting, about scheduling. So now, here's the thing. You just say, how long what is the period that should be covered by my posts, and then you just have the posts, and then you just schedule them accordingly. Sometimes you have the problem, like you don't have the problem on Anchor, which is a podcast platform, and also on Facebook, you can't schedule things in the past. For example, if it's already 2021, which it is, and I want to start my blog in 2020, then I can just type in, oh yeah, this was already published in 2020. Therefore, you can also rearrange things. But the problem with most of social media is that once you post it, the chronology of the posts cannot be changed anymore. Only by deleting, but that's not really changing it. You cannot switch things. That's why it's kind of so hard to come up with something like this, because what if the strategy that so what I wanted to explain is this, because there is an intrinsic reward embedded already into the strategy I just described, and it's this: the more in the stack you have, the more you can go down in the frequency. So this means if you, for example, you have 2 blog posts and you want to have a 10-year period to be covered, then you can only post every 5 years, basically. Not really. So after year 5, you would post, and after year 10. So basically you wait 5 years. Of course, this is like really long-term thinking, but I mean, yeah, it is. So the thing is, the more you have in your stack, the more you actually can now allow yourself to shorten the distance. Because if you have 10 years and now you have 100 posts, you can basically post 10 posts a year. And that's nice, because it doesn't really make sense to plan for the next 10,000 years, because, I mean, you could theoretically, but also then nobody would see all the things in a lifetime. So I think it would make sense then to just shorten the period, to just shorten it, and therefore you could just take the heuristics we already have. So what I did for me is I just said 2 months. Every 2 months there should be something on the blog. And whenever I ran out, I just didn't post anything anymore. And therefore, the next post I wrote regarding this channel, for example, would be landing in this specific point in the past. Or if I couldn't schedule it in the past, then I just post it like in real time. Now, this is the scheduling I did, basically. Now, of course, the big problem is that sometimes stuff is not evergreen. I mean, that's a big assumption, because some of the stuff I do is evergreen, like talking about scheduling without any time references apart from 2021. It's something that's kind of evergreen, and also, I mean, not really, only for a few years. But if you talk about life philosophy, if you talk about stoicism, if you talk about something that's basically not really relevant to a specific time, or only in a larger time scale, basically, what happens is that you can just do this scheduling thing. But what if you want to write about something like politics? Then it just doesn't really make sense. Therefore, you either have to write a lot into your stack, or you could also just exchange the things in your stack, because you don't have to post the stack chronologically once it's done. So therefore, what you could also use this for is you just fill up your stack with things that can be posted, I guess, because it's something you wrote, therefore you post it eventually. And now you just take the things that are relevant to the time and you just post them as soon as possible. So if you have something about politics and about the election that's coming up maybe, then you just take this and post it and just schedule it, rearrange the thing because you have the stack, because it's not posted, therefore you can do things like this, and then just post it the first. And the thing about stoicism is something that can wait for the next 20 years. I mean, theoretically at least. Of course, it would be nice if it was already out there and if it helped already people, but I mean, it's also selfish, I guess, because you have to think about long-term strategies. So now, this is the one thing. So, what I'm currently at with the different channels I have, because I was like, probably not all people are interested. This is also something already explained, that you just want to channel your interests toward a specific target audience. So therefore, I just take the things I already think or have in my life, and I just talk about them on all of these different channels. So now the next thing is that you eventually can go down, and if you, for example, can create 10 things a day, 10 posts a day when it comes to short videos, for example, then what you eventually can do, your stack is maybe 1,000 and it would cover the next 2 years and you're okay with that, then you could just post daily out of your stack and you just take the things that need to be posted right now. And this is where I post for the next 2 years or for the next 2 months and I post daily. This is where they kind of meet, because you just take the normal heuristics we already have when it comes to time. You take decade, you take 1 year, so decade, year, month, week, and daily, and the day basically, and you just use them. You could also post multiple times a day, for example, in each quarter of the day. So you post that. I mean, each quarter of the day is pretty obvious, I guess, what it means. You divide the day into the quarters, and since the day has 24 hours, each quarter is 6 hours, and you just, within the 6 hours, you just post something. So now, what this stacking system, the scheduling system allows you to do is, for one, it allows you for the ideal posting schedule, which is then exactly 2 months, exactly 1 month, exactly 1 week, depending on how much you got in your stack. So that's like the main thing. So you have the fixed time you want to be covered, and then depending on how much is in your stack, and also, of course, the strategy you already applied. And of course, this is something you have to figure out, because you cannot really change it. Of course, you can change it to posting more frequently, but you cannot change how your YouTube posts, or when your YouTube posts, for example, appeared in the past, and the same with Instagram. There was just a joke in my mind. I was just adding. And you also cannot change if you have bad posture and your head looks twice the size of your body all the time because you have such a bad posture when recording these videos. This is something I just added in my brain. So, you basically now have a strategy. The strategy is this. just pick the time, then begin producing the stack, then just pull something out of your stack whenever needed. Of course, you can schedule all the things already. When it comes to long term, this makes sense. For example, the blog posts I have, they are just scheduled, they are sitting in there, but I also can go in and just exchange them, like say, okay, this is more relevant. And I also just wrote something today that may be more relevant in the near future, therefore I just put it in here. And you just change the stack that would be automatically posted, because for some platforms you can't just automatically post. When it comes to TikTok, you now can do 14 days of scheduling. This could mean you could upload 14 videos for the next 14 days, so covering 2 weeks. And this means you don't have to sit down and pull something out of your stack or record something, but you are not recording something necessarily because you now have a stack. Because otherwise, the pressure would just be unbearable, I guess. I mean, if you can deal with the pressure, that's something different. Also, the pressure when it comes to time, because I gotta end this video soon. What it looks like for me, so I just mentioned the platforms, 14 days. When it comes to TikTok, on YouTube, you can basically schedule till infinitely, but you cannot schedule in the past. It's the same with TikTok, you cannot schedule in the past, because most of these platforms are like, okay, what is posted today, and therefore we just take this content and distribute it to all the users we have today. You can schedule Facebook posts in the past, but you cannot schedule Instagram videos or something in the past. With Creator Studio, you can kind of schedule things into the future. And this is also very nice, because Creator Studio is basically now a tool that enables you to schedule things on Facebook and on Instagram. It's not available for Reels right now. It's only available for normal grid posts, so pictures on Instagram, and also for IGTV videos, but only if they fit certain requirements. And yeah, this is really nice, of course. With blogging, if you do a WordPress blog, it's possible to schedule in the past. With podcasting, it's also possible to schedule in the past. Therefore, you can also establish a chronological order by just using the time where you produced things or where you scheduled the things. So this means, for the first podcast I did, I just used all the stacked episodes we had, and I just post them chronologically in the amount of time I want to have covered. So this is 2 months right now. There's also 2 months for all the blogs, because I just don't have more in my stack. Therefore, it's like for the next 2 or 3 years, depending on how much I write currently. But sometimes I write more and sometimes I write less. I mean, ideally, you would basically determine how much you want to write and then make it a daily habit, and then just say, okay, I'm writing 1 blog post a day or 1.5 or I don't know. And then you would just schedule everything accordingly or adapt everything accordingly. Now, what else do we have? I mentioned how you can schedule on these platforms. I mentioned how you actually schedule. With TikTok, for example, it's a little bit more complicated, I guess, because it kind of also depends on the type of content. So for me, on TikTok, it looks like this. I have the stack, which essentially was deleted the last days because TikTok locked me out of all of my accounts. And you can basically pre-upload the stack to TikTok and save them as drafts, and also already keyword them, and then you just pull up your phone and you go onto the channel and click just post. So I had these stacks of like 10 videos, 50 videos, 100 videos, and I just posted them daily. Now, the problem is that the drafts are not stored online. Therefore, if you lose your phone, or if TikTok just logs you out of all of your accounts on this particular phone, then the drafts are kind of deleted, which is not very nice. You could then schedule 14 days in advance, which I probably will introduce in the near future, but currently my workflow also with managing the files is that I use the download files off of TikTok, because TikTok downloads the video, and then I just copy paste them to Instagram Reels, to Facebook Reels in the future, because Facebook Reels and Instagram Reels aren't really connected right now, but they will be, I guess, in the future. Therefore, I would only have to provide them to one platform, and I also copy paste them to YouTube, which is already working. So currently I have like a little bit of a following on TikTok on all of the different channels, and the following on YouTube is basically non-existent, but growing at a certain rate because I already scheduled. For example, on my music channel, I have like all these videos I already posted on TikTok, and I just scheduled them for the next 2 months now on YouTube within, like, it's not the same day. And this is also where you can have to find your compromise. The compromise is that I have like a native platform where I, for example, post a blog post to, and then everything else is either a copy of the exact same type of content or just a link, basically a share link. So basically on Facebook you could be like, oh, this is the blog post, and then there's the link to your actual blog. But you also could be like on TikTok, you just post the exact same video on YouTube, for example, and then it's native content on YouTube. It's just that you posted it before on TikTok, and therefore you might have the watermark on there. So the thing I have, I mean, with every content piece, with every piece of content, you only want to have like one date and one file. So what I have for TikTok, for example, for the short video form, is that I just take the scheduled date, not the scheduled, but the posting date of TikTok, and I just use the chronological order and post it in the same chronological order to the copy platforms, which is the other platforms, basically where I post the exact same videos. Of course, you cannot post videos with copyrighted music, for example, that is embedded, and this is already where it gets complicated, I guess. If it's a video with only your content, then of course you can copy it, but therefore I have like all these different policies, you could say. For example, I just don't do any reaction, or almost no reaction videos on TikTok. And I also try to not use hashtags like For You page, because if you then post the title and the title and the keywords to the exact same title and the keywords, because let's face it, it's the same video. Therefore, I mean, of course you could do it new, or you just take the thing you already did, but you try to do it good once and then just copy it. And therefore I try to not post something like TikTok creator or use it as a hashtag or For You page, because that's something that only works in TikTok, and therefore the other platforms could be like, oh, there are all these creators copying the content from TikTok to these other platforms, and therefore we just ban For You page, and everything with For You page hashtag in it we just don't show to our people. So now you have to find a solution for every type of content. You can either share a content you already posted on a platform, or you can copy the content. You have to find the time in which you want to schedule, and then you just fill up your stack over time, because that's the thing that's psychologically the easiest, because the only thing you do is you fill up the stack with one more thing. And if you don't fill up the stack with one more thing, then things just go as planned. And this is something that's very mentally nice, I guess. And that's the guide to scheduling content for social media.